everybody, we're on a road trip, in case you didn't remember. We're driving Winter's Chevrolet Bolt, Morden. This is Morden. All the way from, we picked him up in Boston, but it was actually Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. But we picked him up in Boston, Massachusetts, because we basically cheated a little. Just a little. And we are driving all the way to Portland, Oregon. We are currently in
Nebraska.
State of corn and high speed limits, and people who drive at 90 even though the speed limit is 75. I basically drained this car completely to get to this charging station because I had to drive at 85, 90 to not get squashed by everybody else driving incredibly quickly. This is my wife, Kate, not to be confused with the other Kate, who is British. Are you British?
No.
No, Kate is an all and out American. She's actually from the Midwest.
I am indeed. I was born in Missouri.
So she's a Midwesterner, and so she's enjoying my reaction to the Midwest for the first time. I've been to the Midwest before, but not outside of airports or outside of curated trips with media press launch things. Anyway, this is day 4 of our travel. Today is our halfway day. In about 100 miles, we will be halfway home, both in terms of distance and in terms of time. We're going to be in Colorado tonight. Tomorrow, we are going to have some fun in the Rockies. By the time you watch this, we will already have left Colorado, so that doesn't kind of give anything away. But we decided to reach out to our Patreon supporters. If you haven't joined our Patreon yet, you can go to patreon.com/transportevolved and asked our Patreon supporters to send us some questions that we would answer from the road. So this one is from Joe. You've done long trips before, but I think this beats them all. Plus, I'm guessing you haven't taken most or any of the ABRP, a Better Route Planning segments before. Despite that, do you feel like you're more or less comfortable going deep into the battery than before? Specious example, maybe you're normally comfortable going down to 25% before charging, but willing to go down to 15% or less now. Maybe not an Eric way of living dangerously, because that guy, you use a word I'm not going to say. Or maybe the other way around. So basically he's asking how comfortable we feel going low on the charge, state of charge. So how do you feel about that?
I have a couple thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm less likely to go low or to charge this particular car up to 100% in the heat because it's not my car.
Yeah, I kind of agree. So today we got into the orange getting here. That's the first time we've gone into the orange, just a little bit into the orange, like we still had 30 miles remaining. So the only time really I've gone into the orange in the entire trip.
Yeah.
And because of that bad experience that I had in California back in March, my long distance road trip planning now basically goes 80% because beyond that is slow, down to 20% because beyond that you're putting yourself in a dangerous position that you may not be able to get to the next charging station. When I'm in Oregon, when I'm in California, and I know that there are rapid charging stations literally every 50 miles, I'm more likely to go into the low end of the pack. But when I'm in a place I don't know, like Nebraska, I'm playing it really safe. Also, I like having spare, because if there's an accident on one of these roads and they close the road and there is a detour, you could be going for a 50 to 100 mile detour to avoid all of the corn. Bedard says, is the software still block the battery below 100%? Also, similar question as Joe, on average, how low do you have the battery? And at a supercharger, I think you mean at a rapid charger, do you put more than 80%? So as we already said, we try not to go above 80. Although when we were in Buffalo and we'd gone to Niagara, that evening we went and sat at a rapid charge station and we did charge up basically to 100% at the charger because we wanted to have a full battery the next day, but that was the only time we've done that. Is the software still blocking the battery to charge below 100%? I think what you mean is has this software update. This is the supposed final fix for the Bolt EV. I know there have been some Bolt fires. We are investigating them. So if before anybody asks about Bolt fires, I don't know what the current state is, and we're waiting for a response from GM. But this one does charge up to 100% indicated. Now I've noticed that when the charging station says 100% or 99%, the car still says 96 or 95%. Beyond charger connector plugs, what else would you like to see EVs standardized, Kate?
What else would I like to see them standardize?
Yeah.
I think I'd like to generally see them standardize on the rate of charging that they could take.
Right.
So, yeah, standardize the plugs, make those pretty easy to adapt to.
Right.
But also standardize the rate at which the cars can charge, as in give me a high, medium, low, or a color sequence, or
maybe
something of that ilk.
ChargeWay.
Yeah.
The ChargeWay system. We've actually been commiserating with Matt Teskey of ChargeWay this week on the phone as we've been driving, because we've been taking photographs of the charging stations to send him. And we've had this conversation multiple times about speed. And not necessarily for us, but for people who turn up at the charging station who've just bought their car. Like the couple we met last night who just purchased an ID4. The car came with 3 years of free charging on Electrify America, and they rent a place. Don't own a place, they rent it. And so they decided not to buy a home charging station. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But they didn't understand the differences of charging speeds or anything. They kind of just, it had been glossed over.
You gave them a crash course.
I gave them a crash course. For me, I would like to see plug and charge standardize. I would like to see Tesla use the same charging plug that now everybody else is using, this one here, the CCS. Oh, someone's just pulled in with my motorbike. BMW GS, that's a 650, totally manageable, beautiful bike.
Focus.
Okay, right. So that was the thing that I would like standardized, plug and charge. What are the amenities, says Mike, at charging stations that make long EV trips the most and least enjoyable?
Well, there's always gas station bathrooms.
Yeah, gas station bathrooms are pretty terrible. Like the woman who came into the ladies at one station we were at yesterday in Iowa, who came in, in Ohio, wrong state, came in and said, "Where are you?" and started looking through all the gaps in the doors in the cubicles, because in America, the cubicles have gaps down the side of the doors, which still freaks me out. You were saying, at bathrooms.
Yeah, as far as making things pleasant, at most charging stations you can usually find a place to get a drink. You can at least find a bathroom somewhere. Let's see. I don't know, I think that's probably about it.
What makes it better?
What makes it better?
Yeah, what things you like when you go and it's like, oh yeah, this is an awesome place to stop.
View.
The view?
Yeah, I'm not a big social person. I tend to keep myself to myself. So there are some really lovely charging stations, like the one we were at previously, 1 or 2 stops ago, that had just a really pleasant, lovely view. Mm-hmm. There was, some clouds coming in, and it was getting closer to sunset. It was just really pretty. So,
I do like places that you can go for a walk with, but today is actually one of the coolest days so far.
Yeah.
Like I'm standing outside filming this now because I know it's going to get hotter through the day, and I promised Kit we'd do it. But it's heat for me, so somewhere cool. Cool to walk.
That reminds me of the charging in Niagara. You and I got up to Niagara a little bit later in the morning.
Right.
When there was still, some traffic around there. And we were coming around to the first parking lot. And you rolled down the window and told the attendant that you needed to charge. And so they waved us through into what was otherwise a full parking lot.
Yep.
And the charging spots
Were empty.
were not only empty, but they were in a great location and
free.
free. So
That was a good one.
yeah, that's always nice.
That was
when you
really good.
effectively get something like VIP treatment just because you're charging your car, and that's where the charging happens to be.
I couldn't agree more with you on that one. Affordable charging is another good one. For me, in terms of amenities, I want somewhere where I can set up a camp stove and make a cup of coffee or a tea. And if there is food there at the location that I want to go and buy, I want it to be food that is not from a chain that has necessarily done bad things in the past. I want to find a chain that is either a local mum and pop that I can support, that is good quality food, by the way, as opposed to just another Walmart or some other chain that really doesn't care about the charging stations and doesn't acknowledge it. Not on this trip, but I've been on trips before where the charging stations have really been embraced by the owners of the location, and you can see that they really care about them, and that really makes a difference too. The other thing that I hate is bad food at those locations. We did get a really bad takeaway in Buffalo. It wasn't at a charging station, but it was after we'd been at a charging station. And it said the best famous wings, and we went there. It was the worst takeaway we've ever had.
It was bad.
We've ever had. It was terrible. All right. Donald says, what's the best coffee shops you've stopped at? Any offer charging? We haven't stopped at any coffee shops.
No.
We've gone to one coffee shop, and that was a Starbucks drive-through the other morning because our hotel didn't have breakfast.
Yep.
The other time I've been making coffee on the road because I'm a bit of a coffee snob, as you may or may not know. It's an EV thing. Kate doesn't like coffee. She likes Mountain Dew. She's a Mountain Dew snob, so we have to cool her Mountain Dew.
Pepsi, if you're listening, we'd love some sponsorship.
Shh. No, that's not allowed. I will not allow that.
Fine.
I will not allow that. We jointly own in case you didn't know, this is the other owner of Transport Evolved. So yeah, I haven't really stopped. I've made my own on the road. How much of the day do you devote to traveling? How do you maintain alertness, says Chrissa Kentava.
So we switch off driving.
Right.
You usually drive in the morning until lunch-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually drive in the afternoon.
Right.
To maintain alertness, I will sometimes nap in the morning. And
you did this morning?
Yeah, you sometimes nap in the afternoon.
You were snoring very cutely while I was listening to my audiobook this morning.
That's why you sleep alone tonight. So, yeah, we switch off drivers as we need to. I don't think we've otherwise had any problems with alertness. To be honest, we're stopping every couple of hours or so, and we just get out, walk around, get the blood moving again. And
I am being really more careful than I would be with my car because this is not my car.
Yeah.
I think we're both doing that.
Yeah,
we're both like, so I'm letting Kate know, hey, I need to stop and charge, or need to stop and sleep, which is my charge. And we'll switch over and go on from there.
So when I was driving back from my folks' house with our daughter.
Right, well stop there before we go there, because people might not know this. Kate purchased her used 2017 Bolt EV, which is identical to this except it's black. It's the same spec. She purchased it in November 2019.
Yes.
And then a few days later drove it all the way to Missouri on her own because our daughter doesn't have a driving license.
But when I was driving back, we had some bad weather, and Electrify America had not yet installed some additional charging points. So it was a little hairy, and in places like that one from Grand Junction to wherever the charging is in Utah.
Yeah.
If you don't stop in Moab. And I pulled in with the EV equivalent of Vapors in that one. So that'll definitely keep you alert.
Yeah.
Don't recommend it.
In terms of driving though, we're doing between, some days are like 11 hours, and I think our longest was 13 and a half hours.
Yeah, but on that trip, I was napping in the car when the car was charging. Mostly because I wanted to get through it very quickly because we had Christmas coming up and whatnot. But what we're doing on this trip is a lot easier because you and I have agreed that we're going to stop at hotels, get at least 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
And that makes the trip a lot easier.
And I am dangerous if I don't get, that sounds terrible, but I'm dangerous if I don't get 7 hours at least every night. My heart condition means that I get extremely tired in the evening, and so I'm not safe to drive after about 5 in the evening anyway. And I go from being fine to being asleep in a very short period of time. So we're not pushing this. This is not a cannonball run. We're both in our 40s. And so we're taking our time. There's no rush. So that gives you an answer. Between 11 and 13 hours. Today is going to be about 12 and a half hours. All right. Bobby and Emilio, hello. Last time I saw you, you were at Fully Charged Live in Austin, Texas. Are you pulling a trailer with the bolts? No. If you are, how much weight is in the trailer and how is your bolt range being affected? How far can you go pulling a trailer before you need to charge? We are considering pulling a small teardrop with our 2017 Bolt Premier. So the little teardrop that I own, that Transport Evolved owns, is back in Portland. Winter doesn't have a hitch on his car. I have a hitch on my Bolt, and I regularly drive with my Bolt. When I went down to California on my own this year, I went down to film with Aptera and also with Hyundai and then also with Lucid. I was averaging 500 miles a day and I was pulling a teardrop trailer, and I didn't notice a huge drop in range at all because the teardrop trailer just tucks right in behind the car. Maybe a 5% to 10% if you are smart about it. So that's kind of from last year's. All right, Kate, do you look for lodging with EV chargers? If so, how do you find them?
Yes, of course we do. We use, you use a better route planner, don't you? To find ones that have charging, you'll use their hotel-based search.
So I use PlugShare to find hotels with charging. So how we do it is I do a better route planner for the overall trip, and then we figure out what 500 miles looks like, because that's about what we're comfortable with. Sometimes it's 600, sometimes it's 400. So tomorrow I think we're only doing like 390 miles or something, because there's somewhere we want to stop and spend some time. So I do a better route planner for the overall route, then I break it down into days. Once I figure out where roughly the charging stations are, I then look for hotels with charging stations on PlugShare. And for this trip, we've been staying at Hilton hotels, which is kind of a surprise because I had a really bad experience with a Hilton hotel earlier this year, which did get sorted. But Hilton hotels, for the most part, have been pretty good with charging, and they've got a particular level of cleanliness for COVID that we've been paying attention to as well. And if you don't mind saying, what's your price range for lodging? So we've been averaging about 150 to 250 a night. But that's because, again, we wanted to stay places that most of them have had free breakfast. Most of them have been pretty clean and good. Last night we spent $20 extra so we could get a room with a hot tub.
But if you were interested, you could always stay at Quality Inn, and where they have charging here, and you might pay a lot less.
But I mean, we made the decision to stay at a big chain that we knew was rainbow friendly. Because I've had some bad experiences. I think you probably have had some questionable experiences in the past. And I'd much rather spend a little more and stay at a hotel where I'm going to rest because I know I'm safe, than I would stay at, you know, Bob and Charlie's random Airbnb somewhere.
What do you have against Bob and Charlie?
I don't know. I use Airbnb a lot, but I don't use Airbnb for road trips because I've had bad experiences at road trip Airbnbs before. And with Airbnb, you generally have to be pretty on the nose as to where you're going to be, when you're going to be arriving, which is difficult with road trips. So there you go. I know Winter and his partner are going to be staying at different hotels because they've got a dog with them as well. All right, final question. Oh, sorry. This is a second part to Jim's question. My spouse and I are planning a cross-country trip for the spring in our EV. Even though it's a Tesla and therefore has supercharger, it would be more convenient and possibly cheaper to use destination chargers every night. We'll be doing a little camping, so RV sites with power will be another option. Honestly, with a Tesla, I would consider buying one of those Tesla beds that you can put in the back of your Tesla and charging and sleeping at a campsite.
Because they have the camper-based charging,
because
right?
well, no, you can get an adapter for the Tesla mobile connector, but the Tesla mobile charging setup is capable of pulling power from a 240 volt outlet, so you get a decent charge overnight.
Yeah.
But most of the Hiltons we've been staying at have Tesla destination chargers. If they have charging, they'll have a Tesla charger and then they'll have a Clipper Creek charger for regular, normal, non-Tesla cars.
But always check each one on PlugShare or something else.
What I would say is check on PlugShare and check on each network site the day you're leaving. So today we checked that this location was working before we left the last one, because there's nothing worse than leaving and being like 5 miles away from your charging station or arriving and realizing it's not going to work. All right, final question. Will you be using nitrogen in your tires to maximize tire life and maintain efficiency?
No. This isn't our car, so we didn't prep it before the trip, but Winter did, and he did a great job.
He did a great job.
I'm
Nitrogen really doesn't make a big difference, though. I mean, that's honestly my professional opinion. Nitrogen makes very little difference.
It's like 80% of the air you breathe anyway.
Right.
So
all you're doing is getting rid of the 20% that isn't nitrogen.
19% is oxygen. Less than 1%-ish, I think, is carbon dioxide, and then there's argon and other trace elements.
So you're not really gaining a whole lot. The tires on this car are pretty much done. Winter had the tires checked, and his tire place said you've got about 5,000 miles left on them. And this trip is 3,500 miles.
Yeah.
So when he arrives in Portland, one of the first things he'll need to do is put some new tires on. We have N-Tire 2.0s from Nokian on our cars in the summer, and Nokian Hakkapeliitta are 3s on the car in the winter. And they're both really good for rolling resistance and really good for tire life. They're very long lasting tires. So I can't speak to this car because it's not mine. But yeah, that's the answer. No, we're not using any kind of nitrogen inflation product in our car. Thanks to everybody for watching. You were awesome.
You were awesome.
You need to do more videos.
Clearly I do not.
We've been doing videos on the road. So we've got the lav mics and the radio packs now, but when we've been in the car, we've just been using the GoPro cameras because setting these up every time we want to talk is a nightmare. Kate's not 100% trained on them. So I would then have to, if I was driving, it would be a whole rigmarole. So we've been using the cameras in the car. So the in-car footage you see from our road trip is not going to have the best audio, but for this, we wanted to put the good camera out and the good equipment. But thank you to everybody for watching. It is wonderful to know that you're all thinking good dots and sending good thoughts our way. If we didn't answer your question or we missed it, I'm sorry. We picked some that we thought would be interesting. And I know people are still asking our questions. We're going to try and put this video up ASAP. Please make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, Transport Evolved, and hit the bell icon. Also make sure that you are subscribed to Transport Evolved Take 2, which is kind of our less official channel, behind the scenes stuff. I think some of the content we're making might end up going on Transport Evolved Take 2. And also don't forget to subscribe to Transport Evolved Shorts. And that's some really nasty diesel fumes right in the back of my throat. That is not a nice feeling.
Don't worry, we'll fix that in post.
We'll fix that in post. Also, thanks on behalf of the entire TE crew, and that includes Kate. Go out to our Patreon supporters on our right, and also thanks very much to our $15 to $49 a month Patreon supporters. They are Andrew Martin, Guido Drahoa, Brophy Wolf, Anonymous Freak, Regine Fellows, Carl Hodgson, Gordon C, Paul Conway, Laura Sandborn, Anthony Coates, Denny Hyde, Sean Ueda, and Tazla in the Gong. And before I go further, thank you very much to, who was it, Regine, who reached out and said, hey, I've just done a trip and you might want to share this online. And we were like, that is a really cool app. I checked it out. Thank you. We're not sharing it in real time because we've had some issues in the past sharing our real-time trips. Let's leave it at that. Also, thanks very much to our $100 a month or more Patreon supporters. They are John Lyons, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, JP Fagerback, Will Graylin, and Ian. I told Ian that you wanted an And Ian t-shirt. I don't know what his reaction really was. He seemed a little bit confused about it. But let us know in the comments below if you are genuinely wanting us to make an And Ian t-shirt. I will talk to Ian and see if he'll let us do that. Don't forget that you can also support us through Patreon. You can also send us Ko-fi, and if you really want to, send us Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not the best way because of carbon footprint. We have a wallet, we keep the server off, and we turn it on, update it, and then turn it back off again. But you'll also, if you want to, you can go to the Transport Evolved shop over at Redbubble and buy some swag, like this lovely t-shirt here. It says Evolved, and it is a Chevrolet Bolt. There is also ones with Teslas on them, but we can't say Tesla or Chevrolet because those terms are copyrighted, and that means the t-shirts.
So it's not a Tesla.
It's a luxury, high-performance car, I think is what we called it.
Yes.
And this is called an electric hatchback. So, anyway. Don't forget also, we're close to our 1,000th Patreon supporter. It would be great to hit 1,000 Patreon subscribers before everybody is in Portland. So we're like 7 people away. So if you know 7 people who could become Patreon supporters of the channel, maybe you could consider it, and then we'll throw a little bit of a celebration when we get to 1,000. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep evolving.